Thanks for being here. Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time here, I hope you'll consider subscribing and sharing this video. It really does help. Also, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Your city, your country. I read every single one and truly appreciate it. Now, let's begin. When Lena stepped off that plane and into the crowded terminal of Chicago O'Hare, her heart was pounding, her palms cold with sweat. She spoke only fragmented English, and her suitcase, barely holding together, contained nothing more than some clothing, a few photographs, and a slip of paper with a scribbled address. She'd left everything behind in Belarus. The streets were loud, the buses confusing, and directions came in hurried words she barely understood. But somehow, through sheer determination and the kindness of strangers, Lena found the tiny room she had rented from a distant cousin's friend. It wasn't much, just a worn mattress, a shaky dresser, and a window that rattled in the wind, but it was all she could afford after spending nearly every dime she'd saved. For weeks, she wandered through the industrial district, handing out her wrinkled resume, facing rejection after rejection. Then one day, fortune tilted her way. She landed a job at a warehouse tucked in the back of an old shipping yard. The work was brutal, lifting, sorting, packing, but Lena accepted it without hesitation. Survival didn't ask for comfort. Her first day was overwhelming. The pace was relentless, and the clipped English spoken around her blurred together like static. Mistakes drew cold stares and sharp corrections. But one face stood out. His name was Mark Ellison. Quiet, brown-haired, with an easy smile and calm presence. Where others ignored her, Mark patiently showed her how to scan packages and locate supplies. When lunchtime came, he even shared half his sandwich without asking for anything in return. Over the following days, Mark stayed nearby, not overbearing, just offering help when needed. His kindness felt genuine. His jokes were simple, but they made her laugh, easing the weight of long shifts. Though Lena didn't trust easily, she found herself opening up. She spoke of home, golden fields, village markets, her mother's baking. Mark listened like every word mattered. In time, he shared his own story, a quiet life marked by a broken engagement and a cautious heart learning how to trust again. Soon, Mark was waiting for her each morning with coffee in hand, and Lena returned the gesture with homemade pastries from their shared kitchen. Their connection grew beyond words. Weekend walks turned into quiet dinners. Errands became shared adventures. Neither labeled it, but they both knew something deeper had taken root. One evening, as rain tapped against their window, Lena confessed everything. Her love, yes, but also her fears. The looming threat of losing her job, her shaky legal status, and the fear of everything crashing down. Mark didn't flinch. He held her hands and, after a long pause, simply said he wanted to give her a safe place. Stability. Future. They married at City Hall. No guests, no celebration, just two witnesses and a promise. Lena wore a simple blue dress. Mark, his usual work clothes. They ate burgers afterward at a corner diner, then returned to his small apartment, where Lena finally felt like she belonged. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Mark paid the bills and took care of their home, believing they were building the life he had long wanted. Lena seemed content, always smiling, always affectionate, but subtle cracks began to show. She received late-night calls in Russian. There were evenings when she locked herself in the bedroom, claiming exhaustion. When Mark asked, she spoke vaguely about her complicated family, saying she'd left them behind. Mark wanted to believe her. He clung to the gestures, the packed lunches, the gentle touches, as proof that her heart was his. Then, out of nowhere, she mentioned her brother, Victor. She claimed Victor had fallen on hard times back in Belarus and wanted to move to the US. She said they'd recently reconnected, and she asked if Victor could stay with them until he got settled. Though hesitant, Mark agreed. Maybe it would help Lena heal old wounds. When Victor arrived, Mark immediately felt unsettled. Victor was tall, intense, with sharp eyes and a quiet arrogance that didn't match his supposed hardship. He offered curt replies during dinner, and the glances between him and Lena were strange. Familiar, but not in the way siblings usually are. Mark brushed it off at first, but over the next weeks, the atmosphere grew heavier. He noticed everything. The way they laughed behind closed doors. The way Victor walked around half-dressed, casually too close to Lena. The long stares they shared when they thought no one was watching. Mark's gut twisted. One day, while leaving for work, he felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't ignore. He pushed through the day, but halfway through his shift, he couldn't take it anymore. He left early, heading home without warning. Quietly entering the apartment, he heard voices. Too soft, too intimate. As he approached the kitchen, he saw it with his own eyes. Lena, her hands cradling Victor's face, kissing him deeply. Not the kiss of siblings, but of lovers reunited. Mark's world collapsed. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He just stood there, watching his life unravel. When they noticed him, Lena froze in horror. Victor's expression hardened with defiance. Mark finally spoke, his voice like ice. "So this is what it's been all along." Lena tried to explain. She admitted everything. She and Victor weren't siblings. They had been together back in Belarus. Lovers desperate to escape poverty. It was all a plan. She married Mark to gain legal status. Once she was settled, she'd bring Victor over under false pretenses. It had all been carefully orchestrated, from their chance meeting to their marriage. Mark listened, numb. He didn't scream or cry. Instead, he grabbed her old suitcase, packed her clothes, and placed it by the door. "You have 30 minutes, he said, his voice eerily calm. "Be gone." Victor scoffed, thinking Mark was bluffing. But when Mark pulled out his phone to call the authorities, Victor's smugness vanished. Lena pleaded, begging for another chance, claiming she'd fallen in love for real. But Mark didn't waver. "You used me. You used my home, my trust, my life," he said coldly. "Now face the consequences." They left in silence. But Mark wasn't finished. By morning he gathered everything. Messages, photos, paperwork, everything proving their fraud. He walked straight into the immigration office and laid out the entire story, calmly and clearly. He didn't do it out of revenge, but because truth mattered. Weeks later, federal agents raided the rundown in where Lena and Victor had been hiding. They were arrested, charged with immigration fraud, and deported back to Belarus, banned from ever returning. Mark received a formal letter from the authorities, thanking him for his cooperation and confirming that his legal status would remain protected. That letter became his closure. He quietly returned to work, forever changed. No longer the friendly, open-hearted man everyone knew. He kept to himself, more guarded. But life, as it always does, kept moving. Months later, during a lunch break, a new co-worker joked about Mark's luck with Eastern European women. Mark smiled, a real easy smile, and said simply, "These days I'm more focused on my peace than on people." No one else thought much of it, but for Mark it meant everything. The past didn't vanish, but it finally settled where it belonged, in the rear-view mirror.